Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Age of Innocence, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Winona Ryder, directed by Martin Scorsese. And why is Scorsese on this list? Well, he made this movie, so. And why is that? I don't know, but because it's not like him, but. You know what? Let's just see how this goes. Let's get into the movie. After opening credits, we open on New York City in the 1870s with Newland Archer, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, who happens to be a lawyer, is watching an opera with May Welland, played by Winona Ryder, happening to be there with her mother and cousin Ellen Olenska, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. As they watch the show, and Newland talks during the performance, as we get a narration. In my opinion, the actors were very good in their roles, but Winona Ryder stole the show as she was tremendous in this movie. We get to a dance with the narration going to on as Newland dances with May as they're engaged to be married soon, and we get shots of everybody on the dance room floor as Newland kisses May in the dance, as he wants everyone to know about Newland's engagement with May, and she wants him to tell Ellen, and he will put. And one problem and he will. But one problem I had, Ellen decided to not come at the last minute, and we move on to May and Newland talking with Mrs. Mingot. And I know this actress playing her as one of the professors in the Harry Potter franchise until Ellen comes in and she knows Newland and May are engaged, as Ellen's befriend Julius Beaufort happens to be there. And the costume designing is the best thing about the movie as far as the movie is concerned. Mr. and Mrs. Archer, including Newland, Mary, and Janie, have dinner together as they have a talk about marriage and someone getting a divorce from Julius. And Mr. Archer has an argument with Newland. And do I care somewhat? Somewhat, as I'm not a fan of period pieces in general, as I can't usually follow them. This one being one of them. But there are some good ones out there. But don't get me wrong, as Newland meets with Julius and Regina Beaufort, and have an occasion dinner, and Ellen happens to be there as they start eating and having a grand old time. And the production design and set decoration looks beautiful. And I never thought Martin Scorsese could do a period piece until he did this movie. Newland goes to Ellen's house and has a talk about May, as she wants May to be safe, as Ellen believes everyone is angry with her, and she tears up and he touches her hand to comfort her, which was a good acted scene. While afterhand, Newland gets some yellow roses too for Ellen to calm her down, and Newland and May go to a place filled with parrots and talk about how May's mother still doesn't know they're engaged, and at this point, I'm bored out of my mind. Newland goes to Ellen and talks with her about Mr. Letterblair, whom I'm guessing is the boss said to Newland about things Ellen might disagree with, as he will take care of everything. And I'm like, what is he taking care of? As this is totally confusing to me. And we move on to another show that happens to be a play in which Newland is watching, and this play looked kind of sad as he goes to the VIP chairs where Ellen happens to be at, and they talk about their farewell scene at the play, and she got a letter from May while she's away, and the score was good, as that was a great, as this was a great shot. This was a great shot by Scorsese. Newland comes to Ellen and hangs out with her, and for what purpose? I get the impression she's in love with him, but as it turns out, she's running away from a man. And we move on to Newland going to May to see her just to marry him, as May confessed she's concerned about their marriage and she believes Ellen is in love with her, but he wants to get married to her sooner than later. And is the narration necessary? No, as the writing in this is fine. And the shots look nice, as it was well made. But in my opinion, it's a good movie, but it doesn't belong in the Columbia Classics, in my opinion. Newland asks Ellen when can he see her, and we see Ellen getting flowers from Julius, as Mrs. Mingot believes she'll go back to her Julius, so that's her husband, eh? That was confusing. And Newland says he doesn't want to marry another woman but May, as there's this is a period piece that feels like a noir because Ellen acts like a femme fatale, as Newland says Ellen is the other woman, and she's upset about it. And this is a romance I don't care for, as May wants to marry Newland in mid-April, and we get to the ceremony, and it looks great. Well, don't get me wrong, Daniel Day-Lewis is great, is a great actor, and he and Michelle Pfeiffer have chemistry. They get an outside location to an outside location, excuse me, as this movie takes place mostly on the inside locations, while Newland and May are married to the point as they're happy and visit Mrs. Mingot, and she asks her maid to get Ellen for her while Newland looks for her at the near the lighthouse, which was a very good shot, and the cinematography looks good. While May's saying some rather cruel things about Ellen, which comes off rather obnoxious for the character she's playing towards her cousin, and it's a shame as it's starting to make me dislike May at this point. And she's the one that stole the damn show. Newland goes to Mrs. Blenker and hears Ellen is in Boston as he finds her the next day by a lake, excuse me, and she wants to be alone, but Newland chats with her anyways about how much time he wants to be with her, and this story is heartbreaking, as Newland has an affair with his wife's cousin as she wanted Newland to come to her at the beach near the lighthouse, and he tells her to go back to London, and she endures the relationship between Newland and her and says she won't come back and never see her ever again. And the shots look great. Newland is approached by Larry Lefferts talking with him about how Ellen is a changed woman, but unfortunately it is not enough for me to like it any better than I do at this point. Newland off screen writes a letter to Ellen when she can see him again, but she says not yet and may makes a change to Newland's clothing to visit Mrs. Mingot, excuse me, and he wonders about Ellen nowadays as he visits her in London with May. And do I like their returning romance? Not really. They go back to London. Newland continuously visits Ellen as he's in love with her while married to May, as he hasn't kissed May at all day long. As they go out for a play, and Newland tries to confess to May he's in love with Ellen, but May says Ellen wrote a letter to May as it was about her moving back to London. And at this point, I don't care for the second half as it falls flat. We get to dinner with Newland and the family as the narrator narrates about how miserable Newland is with his marriage, and he asks Ellen if her trip to Washington tired her, and she didn't sound tired, and Newland looks upset with Ellen at the dinner table, and after the dinner is done, Newland finally says he wants a divorce from May, or he wants to try to ask May for a divorce, and he wants a break, but she says no, and this is making me kind of bored to a point I do not want to watch any more of this, as this may be the weakest Columbia classic I've seen yet to date, as the other ones are better than this. Meg says to Newland she's pregnant with a baby boy, and so how he can't get divorced, and we move on to get the baby boy baptized, and we learn his name is Ted and is interested in archaeology. And Mary is engaged to a man and gets married in the same room where the previous scene took place, while years later May passed away, and Newland gets a phone call from Ted, whom is all grown up, and wants to take his father on a trip to Paris, France, as he makes a promise to visit Ellen, who happens to be his cousin, as they walk around Europe until they get to Ellen's place, and Newland wants to sit outside as he doesn't want to visit Ellen ever again after all these years, and he's reminded of the day at the beach with Newland deciding to walk away, and the climax was fine, but how fine was this movie? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this movie a 5.5 out of 10. Winona Ryder stole the show from Daniel Day-Lewis, and Michelle Pfeiffer as Ryder was very good in her performance, but don't get me wrong, everybody else is good in their roles, but Winona Ryder was great in her performance, and the costume designing is the best thing about the movie. As far as the movie is concerned, despite I'm not a fan of period pieces because I can't usually follow them, as this is one of them, but don't get me wrong, there are some good ones out there. The production design and set decoration looks beautiful, and I never thought Martin Scorsese could do a period piece until he did this movie. And after 35 minutes into the movie, I was bored out of my mind and I was confused for half of it. And the score was good, and Scorsese has some great shots in this movie. And it is well made, but do I like it as much as the other Columbia classics? It's an okay movie. But in my opinion, it doesn't belong in the Columbia classics. The writing was fine, to say in the least, and the narration in some scenes in this movie were unnecessary, but this is a weak recommendation for it, but it's just too long. We got 2 hours and 18 minutes of a romance. I don't care and Daniel Day-Lewis is a much better actor than the material gave him. And he and Michelle Pfeiffer have chemistry, and at the end of the day, it looks great, but it's not a great movie in my opinion. But I'll never put this back in my 4K Blu-ray player ever again, as this was fine, as it was the first half that was good, but the second half falls flat. So before I let you guys go, I have reviewed. Well, the last one that's on the Columbia Classics Volume 5 Blu-ray was Little Women, a movie I've reviewed before by Greta Gerwig. And I'm still sticking with my opinion on this one because it's a good film, but I got a little bored with it at times. So I'm not going to come back until we get another Columbia Classics Volume 6. But until then, thank you guys for joining me, and have a good evening.